Welcome to the Math Academy podcast. I'm Justin Skyzak, Chief Quant and Director of Analytics at Math Academy, and I'm here with our founder, Jason Roberts, to discuss lessons from scaling a startup. As Math Academy has grown over the past year, we're getting a better sense of general do's and don'ts when scaling a startup. We've learned hard lessons about overloading the database, the task processor, and our team, requiring numerous infrastructure and process updates. Schools have been using the system, and we've built plenty of additional features to, among other things, accommodate unique billing schemes and make it easy for teachers to manage classes on the system. We've intentionally grown organically and we're self funded, which forced us to do things manually at the beginning. Years ago, we taught math classes in person, and Jason onboarded our first online users on hundreds of hour long individual Zoom calls. These were crucial experiences to learn who our customers are, what they want from the product, and common failure modes. In our experience, doing things manually at the beginning ensures that you, one, build a product that customers actually get value from, and two, you don't clutter your product with unnecessary bells and whistles that don't add value. In other words, you have to do the manual work to earn the right to scale. So, what are the challenges that we faced and what lessons did we learn? Let's get into it.
Okay, Justin, you got some stuff in mind for year in review tech wise or?
Yeah, so some things that come to mind on the tech side that we've done is, well, let me just kind of go in order of what we did last year. So I think the first kind of tech that I remember us working on was back in the spring, um, to when we had started on the machine learning and computer science courses. So we had kind of mapped out a lot of how the coding questions are going to work and these coding projects and stuff like that. And that is, I mean, we've pretty much figured it out, right? And you got like some kind of a prototype, and it's just a matter of like actually like moving it into the course, putting all
Yeah.
the real questions on it, and fighting all the details that come up there. But yeah, there was that, and then I'll just go through the quick list right now, and then we can revisit.
Sure.
There's also a lot of infrastructure that we built, just system infrastructure to deal with scaling challenges. Because I mean, right, when you have like 10 users, 100 users, like you don't. It's kind of dumb to worry about like, oh, will this work great when we have more than that? It's like, well, don't worry about it. Just like focus on getting more users, and then you earn the right to solve the problems that come with that. But there was a lot of things like, well, we had to upgrade the database. We had to go kind of more systematically figure out like what queries are running slow. There was, I think it was like one or two kind of blow ups, right? Where we were down for like 20 minutes. Or I think one time it was down for like an hour or so.
Yeah, that was,
That sucked. Well, luckily the hour outage happened like on a Sunday night.
yeah,
So that
not a
was,
ton of people noticed. Sunday night
yeah,
on the West Coast,
yeah.
which, yeah, that's probably one of our lowest usage times. So
So
luckily,
Asia was waking up about that time, right?
right. I
Sandy
don't
started
remember
getting
what, would you
emails.
remember what that was? I'm trying to remember. Database was pinning. Right. We had to upgrade the RAM. Like we just didn't have enough RAM was the big problem. And so I hired this I found an AWS expert and I was like, I need some. I was out looking for people and I found this guy and he came on and we were really kind of deciphering some of the metrics on the AWS dashboard and other things. And he's like, I think you just don't have enough. I don't think you have enough RAM. I think we need to upgrade the RAM on the database server, and we did, and that solved it. Although there was something that brought it to light that
So
yeah. Do you remember?
yeah, so I remember this being kind of a cascading thing where it's like, like you might listeners might think like, okay, well, isn't this something that just kind of sneaks up on you and gradually becomes a problem? But really, it's like once the database gets pinned at like 99% plus, it's like it enters almost into a new realm of physics where all these queries start becoming like not just like linearly slower, but like exponentially slower. And so the big blow up happened because the the query that was fetching the data for XP leaderboards suddenly became super, super slow. And that's something that's on everybody's dashboard. So it's running like all the time. And because that became super, super slow, people's dashboards were taking forever to load. And then what do people do when their dashboard is taking forever to load? They refresh the page. Exactly. So now we're just getting like,
Hammered.
yeah, spammed by all
We're
these
getting
page
DDoSed by our own users.
exactly. So yeah, so that got sorted out. But yeah, now it's like anytime we see the database up, there was a time recently, right, when it was above 90% when that we
It was like
that you
last week.
tracked down and fixed. Yeah,
It was like
but
2
it's like
weeks ago.
anytime it kind of starts creeping up like really high, we're just like, oh no, that's bad. Really
Yeah.
bad.
I mean, so the same guy that helped us fix that initial problem, which was, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago or whatever that was, I hired him. So he helped out with this more recent problem, but now we're doing like a weekly call of just a series of different types of upgrades and optimizations. So it's like, you know, what I've noticed has happened is that, when you're a small company, right, you're just trying to do like this 80/20 solutions on everything to get stuff working. Sometimes you put a little more love into something because you know it's really important, but a lot of times it's like, okay, that's a solid B plus, whatever, time to move on. I got like 30 other things I got to do. I can't just sit there and, and tweak this thing for the next 3 days. But then what happens is there's some things that you do even less than an 80/20. You're just like just good enough. Like, okay, it works. I'm moving on. And that could be like with infrastructure too, and all these kinds of performance things. And so, but this starts to accumulate, and then it can run into problems. So in terms of the infrastructure, this guy is going to help me like upgrade all the things that I probably should have been upgrading before. It's like, hey, like one of it is moving from an RDS instance to Aurora, which is like this infinitely scalable database, cloud database offering from AWS, which will be actually less expensive for us, but it will be more performant. And we don't have to worry about like, oh my God, like we're at 80, 90%, 85, 90%. Hey, we got to do something. That just won't
Yeah,
happen
because
because it's just,
database will just expand with the
yeah. Because I don't like that. That was not a fun experience either time.
no, yeah,
That was
sucked.
extremely stressful, extremely frustrating. You're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Because two things, not only can it like, if you don't fix it, it's a problem. But then sometimes, some people are experiencing slowness. Some people, they're not getting much service at all. But you just have to take the whole thing down to upgrade a server. And it's like, it's gonna take at least 20 minutes. And I'm just like, oh my, I can't just take this thing down for 20 minutes or 30 minutes without giving people heads up. People are gonna get pretty upset. You always want to avoid doing something like that. So anyway, these things accumulate. You accumulate technical debt. I think you accumulate what you might call more infrastructure debt. You know,
Yeah. There was another type of scaling challenge that we ran into that actually I remember it didn't exactly take the website down, but people were not getting some people. It was just the task processor got so slow because it got backed up with course reinitializations because it
Mhm.
wasn't prioritizing jobs correctly. So I worked on that for a good like week or two just in the our kind of behind the scenes processors that are computing like what tasks you get next to make it so that they prioritize the jobs better because what happened is we well we came out with this really awesome new functionality that when a course gets updated, we're gonna go send an email to everybody who's in the course with the information, and then we're going to refresh their tasks and their completion date and everything. And it's like, well, great. So we got this all there. It's gonna be so slick. And then what happens the first time we do it? Like, well, we reinitialize a course that has like it's one of our biggest courses and now the task processor is backed up like doing all these like course reinitializations and people are not getting that's just clogging up all the yeah all the processors that is supposed to be like generating new tasks for people. So now people are sitting there without tasks. It's like, well, okay, what you need to do is like any jobs that are for people without tasks, any jobs that are like actually task generation, not just a course refresh or information refresh. You got to prioritize those and then get through the backlog afterwards once you don't have any high priority jobs to do. But anyway, so that works great now. But that was another one of those moments that was like, oh my God, why is this not working? Like, because we didn't know exactly. So it took like half an hour to even diagnose what is going on and then fixing it. Again, not fun,
no, it was
but I mean, There's the things that like you always say, it's like we gotta you run into those issues on a smaller level of scale, you get those solved, and then it's not a problem at the bigger level scale. As long as you're like growing incrementally, running into these problems, you're scaffolding yourself into this higher level of scale is not such a big issue. I mean, yeah, it's painful in the moment, and maybe some people are frustrated, but it's like it's not like we're like growing by a factor of like 100x in a very short time frame, and suddenly like you have all those problems to deal with at that scale, and it's like catastrophic.
I think there's a lot of benefits to organic growth as opposed to like artificial growth. So when you go and raise a lot of capital from from a venture firm and you hire a ton of people and you just spend a lot of money in advertising and you just like go, right? It's sort of like the similar problem, like when somebody wins a lottery and they have a lot of money and they didn't really earn it step by step. So they don't know how to manage it. They don't know how to appreciate it. And they kind of blow a lot of it. And it creates all kind of problems in their life, their relationships with other people, because it was just thrust on them, as opposed to it's like you spent 30, 40, 50 years building your wealth. It's like, you know how to manage it, you know how to interact with other people in regards to it, and whatever. So it's a similar thing. It's like life usually goes better when you go in a nice, smooth upward gradient, as opposed to just bam, you're here. You don't have the appreciation for not only the benefits, but also you would appreciate all but the pitfalls and issues. So,
That's a great analogy. The lottery ticket. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
yeah, you win the lottery and your life is transformed, but you haven't developed the insights, the skills, the judgment for how to manage it, the wisdom, right? Because wisdom is a result of failures, right? And so, in order to build towards something good, whatever it is, you're going to have lots of failures along the way. So, you're going to um, gain wisdom over the years, and that wisdom will allow you to operate effectively at higher levels when you get there. That's why you take a 23 or 25-year-old and you make them president of the company or something. Okay, well, that's going to be a disaster, right? Unless it was like a little startup that person built themselves, and even then, if it happens too fast, they didn't develop the skills. They don't know how to manage people. They don't know how to, do a lot of things correctly, right? So I think it's usually better in life. It doesn't mean that you can't speed run stuff to some degree, but you shouldn't skip steps.
Yeah, you can speed run by compressing the work, by making it more efficient stuff, but you can't speed run by skipping. Right. Exactly. There's no shortcut. There's just running faster on the long way.
Just doing stuff more efficiently. Okay, and the way you do things efficiently is you actually do things. You run experiments like, let's try this. Some things work, some things don't. You learn from those. You go, that hurt. That felt good. That worked. What can we take away from this? We learn, and you can do that. Okay, now let's run another experiment. So let's build on this or whatever. But all that stuff are honest lessons that you are incorporating into a compressed sort of wisdom. And I think that, you know, one of the reasons that I've wanted to approach Math Academy the way we have, which is that we have not taken outside investment. It's all completely self-funded. We don't pay for advertising. We simply try and do everything we put things on hard mode. It's like, you want more users, create a better product so people talk about it, right? I'm not like I'm ever against advertising, but my bias is to try and do things in a hard way, but also because the hard way means that you have to solve problems. You don't get to postpone the problems or ignore the problems or paper over the problems. And so, we by doing things slowly and then things ourselves, we learn how to, the big conversation we had with Alex about, how to improve the pedagogy. We learn about how to create more efficient, more robust infrastructure, cleaner code, whatever. But you got to learn all those things. So I don't know. Don't skip steps. Do things as efficiently as possible, but gain the wisdom along the way so that you're operating in as optimal way as possible at every stage you're at.
Totally. So yeah, so that's definitely. I'm sure there's more scaling challenges that we'll face in the future, but at least we got our head above water now. For now.
Yeah. Well, what's
Knock on
interesting.
wood. I probably just jinxed us.
No, yeah, but so bringing on this AWS consultant has been really helpful. He's great, really knowledgeable. And then we're kind of going steps. He's not like, well, I'm going to create a whole new thing for you. It's like every week we're going to upgrade a service. We're going to make something more robust. We're going to make something more secure. We're going to make something more fault tolerant, whatever it is. And we're just going to keep doing that. Within a 2 or 3 months, it'll be state of the art in every way. I mean, it's already not bad, but it could be better. And I just want, you just don't want to have any unnecessary weaknesses in your system. I mean, whether it's things just you're running out of compute or memory, or something's insecure in some way. So yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah, it's I guess there's a different. We always talk about like these kind of made up problems that you can envision into the future, but it's like, well, if you have suffered at the expense of a problem in the past, and you know that problem is gonna come back shortly if you don't kind of like stay on top of it, then you can reasonably infer that it's a good idea to avoid this problem. This is not a made up problem. Like you've seen it. This is not a ghost. This is actually a concrete thing that punched you in the face before, and if you don't shield yourself from it again, it's going to come back at you with a baseball bat. So like let's
Yeah,
avoid that issue.
because if I had, but the thing is and because we went through this together, if I had just told you about this stuff, oh well, Justin, we got to make sure, blah blah blah. It would have made as much sense to you as like you suffered through it. You had to help to detect where the inefficiency were come from. You had to help debug queries. We had to find, you know what I mean? So now you're like, okay. Now going forward, you'd be like, okay, we got to be careful with some things, right? Because
Exactly.
as we get a bigger user base, so okay, what was one of the lessons? Okay, as you get a larger user base, you can't just say we do something for all these people at the same time.
Mhm.
Like that can't happen. Things have to be throttled. Things have to be queued up and throttled. It's fine when you have like 100 users or 1,000 users, but you get to a certain scale and it's like, boy, everybody who's an integrated math one, that's a lot of, it's a
Yeah,
significant number of
yeah, you really
people,
gotta
you know?
prioritize jobs, right? Because it's like I mean, I've definitely felt this in the past year or two where like I used to have to-do lists that I could actually like kind of like get through, but now it's just like it's the related rates problem does not check out. The rate in is much higher than the rate out. So it's like you need to prioritize the workload. There's no concept of the list going away, but there's the concept of prioritizing like new items that are added to the list. They have to be ranked appropriately, and this rating has to be adjusted frequently. And so now it's not just like you and me and Alex and the team in this situation. It's like literally the processors are in this situation. They have so much to do that often. I mean, just sometimes there are spikes when there's so much to do all at once that you have to prioritize and even it out. But yeah, let's talk about some additional like so the scaling challenges, right? That a lot of infrastructure or just tweaks and improvements that we made to that over the past year, but also gravity feature,
Mhm.
which is currently being beta tested.
Yeah, probably just made a couple of tweaks to that and we could roll that out to probably everybody, I guess. But yeah, so the gravity feature, how that was imagined was, people would say, well, we're using Math Academy, but I'd really like for my daughter to be able to do these specific topics because they're going to be tested on this thing or as part of what's going on in school or whatever, right? And up till now, there was no real way for anybody to influence and prioritize certain learning paths, because it's like as long as it's like we're trying to do is optimize that they get through the course as quickly as possible, not that they get to solving systems of linear equations as soon as possible. That happens whenever it happens. It doesn't really matter. And then most parents or adults are like, I don't, as long as I go through everything in the course as efficiently possible, I don't care. But there are certain situations where adults who are still learning on their own care, and there are certain instances where parents care because they may not be living in a vacuum. They may be using Math Academy to help them do something else, which has targets to learning certain things. Also, in a school, in a classroom, if a teacher is using Math Academy and says, okay, I got 10, 20, 30 kids all using Math Academy, and they're all in, say, Algebra 1, and I'm like, you're a teacher, and you're like, well, okay, it's great that everybody's learning optimally, but I kind of would like to corral people to get to a certain point so we can do things together as a class. Like we might have a project that we're going to do, but everybody needs to know a certain skills in order to get anything out of this project, right? So if they could say, well, I'm going to add gravity to certain topics, it will influence, it will pull students to there as quickly as possible. So that's kind of what gravity is, and that's why people wanted it.
Yeah, it gives people more agency over what they're learning on the system. While at the same time, it's like, well, you can't override the system. Just say, I want to do this, I want to do that. Like, because it might not be a good decision. You might be missing prerequisites and stuff, but you can at least tell the system what you want to do, and it'll go towards that situation in a way that works.
Just as if you were talking to a tutor. So let's say that your parent, let's say as a parent, you hired a tutor to work with your kid, and let's say they're taking calculus, and your kid's a little behind because whatever reason they were sick, they weren't paying attention, they weren't taking the class seriously for the first quarter or second quarter, and so now it's like, okay, well, we got to remedy this situation. Well, you have a midterm coming up in a couple weeks, and that's going to cover definite integrals, and you're like, you're struggling. They're struggling with basic integration techniques, much less solving definite intervals. So you're like, if you tell the tutor, say, okay, well, listen, the end of next week, you're going to take this test. The tutor will be like, okay, yeah, okay, I was going to do some related rate stuff, but we'll push that off the side. We're going to go and focus on integration techniques and areas and things, and we'll include definite intervals and limits of integration, and we'll tackle that stuff. Fine, that's fine, and that's what you would do in real life, and ideally, Math Academy should work like an expert tutor. I mean, that's really our mental model. Like whenever you and I talk about it, it's like, well, what should the system do? It's like, okay, well, what would you do if you were tutoring? What would you do right in this situation? Then we should do that. The system should operate as much in that. So you can't get there as a tutor and just say, well, I want them to cover this topic right now. The tutor would be like, well, they don't know. I can't teach them that because they don't know all these other things and need it. But what I can do is I can get them there, and you'd be like, oh, okay. I respect your expertise as a tutor, but please just get her there as soon as possible because she can't afford to not do well in this midterm, whatever. So yeah,
And just like a tutor, it's like, well, if you want to cover a large swath of knowledge in like a single day or 2 days, like, sorry, that's just not going to happen because there's a limit how fast you can build upon this knowledge. It's like we can't go from not knowing any calculus to knowing a topic halfway in the course. We can't do that over like 2 days. Even if you were to put in the work to try to build up this all those missing prerequisites along that path, when you've said this before in previous podcasts, when you build too much on unstable, unconsolidated knowledge, you struggle. And so you're not really going to get through those topics successfully. Most likely you're going to get to a point where you're just failing stuff because you haven't allowed the prerequisite knowledge to consolidate. You haven't done any review on that. You're just trying to like eat the whole elephant in one bite.
And the thing is too is that as we know from cognitive science, is that long-term memory consolidates when you're sleeping, right? Which means there's only so much you can do in a certain day. Because why? Because okay, the biggest cheat to overcome. Okay, so you have a certain amount of working memory. The average person has 4 to 7 slots of working memory. So, so if you're solving a problem, you have, just think of it like the size of your desk, and each part of the problem is a paper, and you can only have so many papers on the desk before you just can't look at them all at the same time. Okay, some people have lucky and they have the bigger desks, so I can spread stuff out. Some people have smaller desks, less working memory. Okay, so what's the cheat to get around that? The cheat is any information that is not the elements of the problem you want to be in your long-term memory, because if it's your long-term memory, it does not take a slot up in your working memory, right? So you get it for free. But if it's short-term memory, so you have working memory, you have short-term memory, you have long-term memory. Short-term memory would be something maybe you just learned 15 minutes ago or an hour ago, or whatever. Long-term memory is something that is embedded long-term. Okay, you might have learned days, weeks, months, or years ago. Okay, so if there's a lot of things that have to do with this problem are all short-term memory, that's all taking slots up in working memory. You can't You can't see everything in the problem. You can't problem solve. You can't think your
Yeah.
way.
Cognitive overload. When your working memory utilization gets pinned up against the limit of its capacity, you enter this realm of almost like that database physics, right? Or just weird stuff starts happening. You start making silly mistakes. You're
You're just
struggling
overwhelmed.
to,
I don't really know
yeah,
what's going on. You can't operate effectively. Yeah, exactly. So if you're saying, well, I'm going to learn 3 topics in a row today that build on each other, each one of those topics is probably taking up at least 1, if not 2 slots of your short-term memory. So even if you're a more gifted, high aptitude learner who has more working memory, you're quickly taking up those slots because because it's short-term memory, not long-term. Now, if you just learned 1 to 2 things at most a day, you let the stuff consolidate to long-term memory, then you're operating with your full efficiency on your working memory. And so what you want to do, and ideally it goes to long-term memory. It's usually not consolidated after 1, but usually after repetition or 2, right? So it's like, it's not just you did today. It's
yeah. Yeah, we talk about right now. We're talking about it as though it's like a discrete 0 to 1 event, which I mean, you can kind of approximate it. Like, I mean, at the beginning, like not knowing it, sort of knowing it, but yeah, it's really a fuzzy process. But just for listeners, like, yeah, there's more. It's a little more complicated, but this is essentially the big picture. What matters.
right. So speed running your way, there is a limit. So you have to put a governor on that process. Because I remember we first did that, and then I remember thinking, I was like, oh my god, I know what people are going to do.
Yeah, yeah. There's a good speed run.
I want to learn 10 topics in a row, and I just want to do them all one day. You can't. That's not going to work. And then they're going
Yeah,
to get confused and frustrated, and they think it's our fault because it's confusing. They don't understand the material.
yeah, and the reason that this is such a like this is not just a made up people are gonna do this. It's like we have people who, I mean, not most people have more reasonable XP paces, but there's a portion of people who are just like like hardcore, like putting up hundreds of XP per day. They're learning like 10, 15 topics per day. And if you allow them to just like, oh, why don't we just, instead of taking those 10, 15 topics and spreading them out like breadth wise along their knowledge frontier, if you allow them to go depth wise, now they are going to overload their working memory. Because when you go breadth wise, like that's fine. You can learn you've got the prerequisite knowledge consolidated for all these different topics you want to do. So you can learn, like you pick 10, 15 topics along the breadth of the knowledge graph of where the prerequisite material, no big deal. Because any one of those, it only requires material that you've already consolidated. But when you start going like, oh, let's just learn a bunch on same day depth wise, let's go 10, 15 topics stacked on top of each other. Well, every single one of those topics that you've learned that day like has not had time to consolidate yet. So it's really kind of in your working memory. It's putting pressure on your working memory much more than if you had spread that out breadthwise. So
Yeah.
that's
And a lot of people typically do not have any intuition about this. Like, why can't I? And so what happens is they immediately do that, right? And I immediately said, right after I released it or was about to, I said, Justin, I just realized this is what's going to happen. We need a throttle. Like, they're going to do this. You're like, really? I'm like, yeah. I mean, the reality is that you want to give people enough freedom to operate the system in a way that really fits what they're trying to achieve, but you got to put limits on it so it doesn't allow them to do something that's going to be detrimental, right? Otherwise, the whole effort becomes a fail. They become frustrated. You lose them as a customer, and they blame you. It's like, okay, I'm not gonna let you drive the car into the side of a wall. It's not a reasonable thing to do. The thing's gonna auto brake. It's not gonna happen, And so and then of course it turns into they get frustrated, upset, and then I get like a page-long email with them complaining about stuff, and you're just like, it's like the one hand you want to give them this ability to customize stuff, but now it's a customer support headache.
yeah. You got
Yeah.
enough of those, and even just from the gravity beta testing rollout. I mean, there's other things where people just used it in different ways that well, I mean, you would predict it some of these ways, but
Yeah. If there's a way to misuse it,
yeah.
they're gonna misuse it. I mean, I misuse it in a way that it's not gonna, it's like, hey, like I have some screws. I'm just going to hammer it in. I'm not going to use a screwdriver. It's like, dude, what do you not, this is the hammer. This is a screwdriver. You don't do it this way. I don't understand. I hammered it in, but the screwdriver won't work to bring it out. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? You know?
Well, you gave me the hammer. Like, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you prevent me from using it in this way? Now I just like screwed up all my construction. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a danger, there's a downside to giving people too much ability to customize, give them too much control because they can tie themselves up in knots, and which causes them to have a poor customer experience, and then of course it increases your customer support load because then they're confused and then they're upset at you, and it's just this whole thing where if I just said we're just not going to let you do it, and where it's like maybe only a minority of people wanted to do it, but so, you kind of have to make that calculation. Is it worth giving the freedom to do this, knowing that we have to create getting the interface in a way that it's simple enough for them to do it so they don't tie themselves up, not prevents them from doing it. And gives them enough information to understand why they can't do stuff. Right. Because even when you do explain it, they still don't necessarily read it very carefully because nobody reads. And if message box up says, hey, don't they? They're like, yeah, okay. Like they don't read it. And then they send you an email. You're like, read the message box, which said, you know what I mean? So it's like, there's no right answer. It's just you have to decide pick your poison, right? Do I have a product that just doesn't give anybody any control? And you're say, look, it doesn't give you any control. This is the way it works. And people are like, well, it's frustrating. I want to do this. I'm not going to use it. You're like, okay, you give a bunch of people control and they tie themselves in knots. You have a lot of customer support problems. So it's like,
It's one of those problems like, at the beginning when you have 10 users or whatever, 0 users, like it doesn't matter. You don't have to worry about customer support. There's no drag factor from customer
it's
support.
not enough customers for it to be that big of a problem.
Exactly. So your problem is just to attract customers, right? So you're just like, build this,
Can
build
I get
that.
a customer, please?
Yeah, exactly.
One customer would be great.
Yeah. But right, once you get to a certain level of scale, it's like, well, you can really shoot yourself in the foot by releasing something that is half baked or just not even like full baked, like by releasing it out to just everybody. And now it's already like even just the baseline amount of customer support is like a serious drag factor. That's just like, oh my goodness. Like you plan on like, oh, I'm going to do this, this, and this today. And then it's just like, oh, actually, no, I'm just going to do customer support for the first few hours of the day. And then I'll get to what I was meaning to do.
I mean, customer support it's a lot, because Math Academy it's not a complicated, it's not like Microsoft Excel or something or Photoshop, which is a huge range of what you can do. And it takes a lot to get people up to a certain level, but it's also not trivial. And so in a lot of these people get on websites and they just were like, they just want to just do whatever, right? They don't want to read. They don't even click stuff. They don't try things. They just immediately email you, like explain stuff. And so, like that load could be excessive, I mean, it's mostly people who just aren't even trying the most basic thing. They don't try to find their settings by just like, let me go to my name. Oh, there's settings, hit the settings. Like they just don't even do that. They're just like, how do I change stuff? You're like, really? I mean, I get it. If you spend 5 minutes and you're a little 5, you get frustrated and you're like, where's the thing? But when you don't even, I mean, this is weird, but people do it. And then it's like, well, you gotta, respond to them,
Yeah,
and
it's
so
just the reality of the situation. Got to deal with it. Would prefer if it were a different way, but this is the way it is. So
yeah,
that's what we got to adapt to.
it's not that people are like, people are just impatient and everybody's like continuous partial attention. They're doing it while they're doing something else. Like, oh yeah, they're just kind of, you know, so we have to constantly try to think ahead and be like, well, is this going to create customer support load? If so, how do we get ahead of it? I don't know. So that's just, and given that my wife is customer support, like I suffer when there's customer support load because she has a bad day because she's like, oh, I got so many emails. I got a bunch of people being really mean or being really rude. And she's like in a really bad mood because of that. Oh my God, because it sucks. It sucks. You get someone sends you email, it's all caps, rah, 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 and it's usually because something they're on, 9 times out of 10, it's something they messed up. And then they're yelling at you. And It's just, even though you can develop a little bit of a thick skin to it, it's really not enjoyable. And so you try and do everything you can to make this stuff clear. But the thing is, like, and then you send emails to explain stuff, people get mad. Don't, why are you sending me emails? Like, we sent you 3 emails, like, get like mad, right? And then it's just like it's a no-win. It's a no-win situation. It's no win. I don't know. So all
So
you can
no,
do is chip away at different sides and do the best you can, I guess, is like, yeah.
yeah, yeah, right. It's one of those things we're just gotta kind of grow into and figure out at each level of scale
Yeah,
how to deal with it.
exactly. Exactly.
So another thing that I wanted to talk about on the tech side is just schools using the system now. So
Right.
we've had individual customers, and we've had, I mean, our own school program,
Mhm.
which you would just do stuff in the database manually, right? Just insert records, like, and so now we actually have like way more schools on using the system, which is like, that's great, that's awesome. But it's like, well, you need to build all this infrastructure, all this functionality to manage that effectively, because you can't just be manually inserting all these records all day. And they need to see information, they need dashboards, they need all sorts of stuff to use the system effectively. And if we don't give them the ability to use the system effectively, then what's the point of having them use the system? It's going to fail, and we're going to get the blame for it. So it's like, well, got to give them support. And it's like, it just reminds me of, back when we were just getting our first customers, you would onboard every single customer through a video call for like half an hour, like an
Hour.
hour, just like an hour, a
Never,
full
it was
hour.
never le I was no, never less than an hour, almost always an hour, sometimes more. I try and
Wow.
keep it to an hour.
Yeah.
Often,
Okay.
typically
So it's
3 a day.
serious chunk of time.
I did
Yep.
200.
200.
That was a that's a lot of phone calls, man. That's a lot of Zoom calls. I mean, okay, so, that was a critical thing to do because, when you're doing a startup initially, you're really trying to do customer development, which means you're really trying to understand who your customer is, what the problems are that need solved, right? Because you have this idea in your head of who your what of that. This is the customer. This is what they're using, and this is what they're going to do. And even if it's sort of mostly correct, there's just a lot of detail that you don't have. You need to go from low resolution to high resolution. And you're like, oh, right, I need this, I need that, I need to make this more clear, I need to change this setting or make this setting something that they can do or whatever. So, I would get on with all these people. And so Sandy would set them up for initially, they would just go and they'd basically reach out from the website, and Sandy would schedule a call and would show up on my calendar. And she's like, well, you got 3 calls today. You got one at 10, you got one at 12, and you got one at 1. I was like, oh, geez. And, I mean, I always enjoyed talking to people, but it was also it was exhausting. And you're basically saying the same kind of stuff over and over again. And of course, I don't have as much time to actually build the solutions, right? Because I spent all the time hearing about thinking, God, I got to build this, I got to build that. So I did that with people, and that was great. And then we got the onboarding strong enough and the setting strong enough where I didn't have to do that anymore. And now it's like, and then it got a point where schools are reaching out and say, we want to we've heard some great things about Math Academy. We'd really like to use it with this group of students or whatever. And we're like, okay. And Sandy'd be like, well, there's this charter school in wherever, and they got 10 or 20 kids or something, and they want to, and she's like, how do you want to set this up? Initially, I just set it up like as if it was like a parent with a bunch of kid accounts, right? There was no, that's all there was. It's like they're 20, where the UI was not really built for it. It was sort of, and I would set it up kind of manually. They'd send us a spreadsheet, with, well, there's these 2 classes of these teachers, and each one had these students, and this is the courses they're in. And I wrote a bunch of scripts and a bunch of stuff, and I'd have to manually set it. It would take me like half a day to get that all set up, because there's always special case stuff I hadn't thought about. It's like, well, there's subscription, but then it's like, get an invoice, and then this person, and then and you're just like, and the same, you'd be like, hey, well, can you set up this school today? I'm just like, oh, there goes half my day, right? And because thing is that because I was doing everything myself, I had to be really careful. Am I typing the email incorrectly? Did I spell this person's last name correctly? Right? Because you're doing all this stuff, and it's like I'm just transcribing it and copying, pasting, and So that's why it's so slow, and it's also cognitively taxing because you're just worried about making a dumb mistake, right? And then you got to
Yeah,
send
it
them the
really
email,
blows
say,
you
"Hey, I
out.
just set up your classes for you, and this is how you want to log in, and this is their passwords, and this is what you," because we don't have like onboarding, so I have to write a long email to try and help them understand how everything's set up and what to do. And I did that for, I've been doing that for a year and a half or whatever it is. And it was first it was like it was infrequent enough that wasn't a deal. It's like, well, I'm not gonna build an onboarding thing because I just had like one school, right? And then it's like two schools, and then it's three, and then it's five, then it's eight, then it's 10, and then you're just like, gee, it's happening all the time. And it's like really, it's like great to have a school, but then it's also really annoying. And then they're constantly emailing, what, Jason, is there a way that we could see this? There's a way I could do that. We want to add some students. We want to do this. And they don't have a way to do that. So you'd have to do it. Or I would have to do it. Sandy would get an email from them, and then she'd email me. You sell stuff. I mean, it's just right? But so you
Mhm,
do everything manually. And so finally I was like, okay, this is no longer sustainable. And so I need to build a UI where Sandy can just go and there's a dialogue box. We can go up and she can just like have all the stuff that she needs to create a school and the admin and everything. And then that person gets an email different, and then they can go in, and then I built all the screens for adding team member instructors and admins and adding students and setting up classes and all that kind of stuff. And so now they just get their admin account. It's like, okay, go do your thing. And so that was a huge like step forward, because now that, but it's not complete because schools cannot go to our website and sign up themselves. They have to kind of email Sandy's, and a lot of them don't even know that most people would come to it. They wouldn't even think there's a school offering. It's sort of like you go to a restaurant and they have like a special menu item or something. You have to know.
mhm.
So we need to, what we need to do is we need to have another thing on the website. It's like, are you a school? Yes, I'm an admin. This is the school email address. This is this. What do you want to do? And then they can just go in and enter it just like they're an adult setting up their own account or for their kids. And then they can set everything. And we could just maybe at the most, if we want to confirm it, because they're going to add so many accounts. But it followed the same. I follow the same procedure. I remember listening to an interview years ago with Brian Chesky, one of the founders of Airbnb, and he was talking about how initially they just had a big spreadsheet of photographers that lived in these different cities where they had where people were trying to rent their places out, and they would on the spreadsheet and they would assign it, go take photos of this place, so we put it up, and it was all manual. It was just a spreadsheet of stuff. But that's how you start. Everything was like manual, and you just grind through it that way until it get to a point where like, okay, this can't work anymore. So we have too many photographers, too many cities, too much we can't, and then it sort of forces you to do it. Now, what ends up happening, at least it seems to happen in my case, is you do the manual thing just a little too long, right? Because you don't want to have to bite the bullet, because it's like, okay, do I spend 2, 3, 4 hours setting up the school, which is really annoying, or do I spend, however long, a day and a half, or whatever it is, building out this UI stuff and all the backend and functionality, or you just set this thing. Or well, I know for the school stuff, of course, it was more like a couple weeks of work, and you're just like, I don't have time for this, you know.
Yeah, and it's a continual thing too, right? As like, I mean, you build the thing that was needed for the most painful thing at the time, but then as the schools start using the system more and more, you realize more stuff that they need
They more
and
stuff.
just yeah,
They want
it's
more.
yeah.
Well, exactly, but that's what your customers kind of pull you forward.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's funny
to show
because
you
I
the
talked
way.
to this one
Yeah.
guy. He's like, Jason, why don't you just focus on homeschool and stuff? And I was like, well, because that seems a big enough market or whatever. And I said, yeah. Because the thing is that schools are going to use it anyway, right? They'll just use it the wrong way, and it'll create customer support for us. Because if they decide they're going to use it, so there might something. Because what happens is the people reach out, they're kind of like really excited about it. Like, I've used this myself for my own kid or whatever. I think it's great. I want to use it with our micro school or charter school or public, this gifted group, whatever it is. And they're like, if I say, well, we don't really have a school set up, what they would just do is set it up like the parent with like 30 or 100 kids. And it's a giant mess. And then they're emailing with support issues. And so they're going to use, I don't get to decide. And so all we can do is facilitate. And then as all right, fine. If you're going to use it, then let's try and make it, you know, as seamless of an experience for you as possible so that not only are you happy, obviously we want more customers. That's great. We want people to use and benefit from the system because that's our mission is to make math a more effective, effective learning, available to everybody. But the other thing is, I like the idea of that we're going wider than just like one little niche of customer. And but they're gonna use anyway. So you gotta deal with it. And if you don't make it easy on them, they're gonna just make you suffer because they're just gonna
You're
use.
gonna yeah, you're gonna pay one way or the other. One way if you don't build the functionality, you pay in support, or you pay to like build the functionality. But if you build the functionality, you actually get something in return for the work that you put in. You actually continue moving forward. Whereas the support is just like it's like you're just burning time.
And it might, there's someone could say an argument, say, well, Jason, if you just niche down, you just really hyper focus this on one group and you just say no to all these other people. And I'm like, that's one approach. I get it. Some companies might do that. I don't like that. I don't want to do that. I don't.
So we don't want to be like the get known as like, oh, this is the math system for homeschools, and that's it. Then that's
For
just what
gifted
like
kids or
no,
for
we're the anyone who wants to learn math, who is serious about learning math. That's our customer.
that's our
That's
customer.
who we want to solve.
Yeah. And well, most recently we had our first university professor want to use it. And so that was a whole different thing. So he's like, I did a phone call with him and he's like, so he teaches at a liberal arts college in the Northeast. And he's like, yeah, Jason, he said, the thing is, he's like, if I try and get this through the math department, it's going to take forever. He's like, but university student or college students in these courses, like you can say, well, you're going to use WebAssign or there's certain resources or digital textbooks or textbooks that this is a requirement for the course. He says, if it's like underneath a certain amount, $100 or $150 or whatever it was per quarter or something for the student, then they can pay. If it's more than that, the math department would be like, yeah, we can't require them to spend, $1,000 or something, right? So this is not. So it's like it's within this price range. It's reasonable, and then it can work. But that created a whole different flow because he has the class. He's setting up at the class. It's Calc 2, right? And he's like, but I'm not paid. He's not paying for it. So they're paying for it separately, but they need to immediately get funneled into this class. They need to have this payment structure. They're not doing a subscription. They're paying for a, 3 or 4 or 5 month. This is the term, right? You're doing a semester long or a quarter long thing. It's this many. It's from this date to this date. You're paying for it. I mean, you can renew it, but you're paying a one-time thing for access for this period of time. And each student is paying with their own credit card. But yet they can only sign up for one course and they can only go and they immediately get funneled to class. Totally different thing. Because if I just said, oh, well, just tell all the kids, all your students to like sign up and then send me their emails and then I'll manually create a class, and it's like a nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I bit the bullet and spent like a couple days working on, because then the sign up flow is all different, all how it interacts with Stripe, and because now you're doing invoices, payments as opposed to subscriptions, and it's the whole thing. And but now that it works, it's like any college professor comes to us and say, hey, we'd like to use Math Academy for this. It's like, great, here's just set up your class, and now you go. Now what you go. I still, he had to say as instructor. I had to set him up as instructor, but once he's an instructor and it's for a university, he just goes. The professor just goes and hits invite students, and you paste in a bunch of emails addresses like you do with any of these kind of group oriented apps like Slack or anything else. They get emails say, hey, you've been invited to Calc 2 taught by Professor blah blah blah, and click here to accept it, and boom, takes them. They have a sign up page, right? Purchase the whole thing. So it's just like
Nice. It's
nice.
Like, yeah.
So the next step, of course, just like for schools, is that, when you go sign up, it would say, are you a school K through 12 or a university? Are you a professor? Are you independent? So then they could go down kind of like a wizard, and then it would funnel them into the sign up process, and then it would help them get everything configured. So that would be kind of the next step. That way they don't have to email me and we have to do the whole thing. And
Yeah, it's kind of a kind of interesting thing, realization that I've had while watching you do all the stuff to support the schools is that, like, I never realized how much effort goes into setting up just, sign up and payment systems. And
ugh,
like schools are like, it's not like they just put in like it's not like an individual user payment, right? It's like a completely different sort of system, and different schools have sort of different ways of doing this, right? So you got to kind of support all sorts of um,
configurations. Yeah.
general, yeah, conventions for that sort of thing. And yeah, but yeah, so it's another just yet another one of those things that pops
But
up that you don't
it's
expect.
like you kind of have to listen, we talk about doing things organically because you don't really know ahead of time. Because if we said, oh, like we're going to create this system and it's going to be for schools, it's going to be for adult students, it's going to be for parents, it's going to be, and then you really, you don't understand how the configurations need to work and what people really need to know. You can kind of guess, but it's all just very confusing. And I remember thinking about if I sign up for even just the more basic, it's okay. So there's an adult account, a parent account, but they're not actually a user. They're a parent, but then they have students, but they themselves could be a user. And you have a
Right,
adult thing. I mean, it was very like because nobody does it like that. And if you go to like my model, my mind is you go to like IXL and you pay your $10 a month, so your kid can do drills or something like that. You just sign up. You don't really have parent account. You don't really see what they're doing. The kid just has a login or something. And
hmm.
I would just like, no, we need more oversight. We need more stuff. And I I'm sure there are other sites that do something similar, but I hadn't had any. Hadn't seen anything like it, so I had to kind of sit there and think through like, how's this need to work?
So imagine if you had tried to build out all that payment infrastructure just at the beginning, before doing this manually, before going through all the reps, and you had some vision of like, oh, this is how things should work. Doesn't this make sense in theory? And then he built all that out. It's like not only would that be time wasted, but you'd have to choose between like kind of undoing and rebuilding it all, or just trying to like contort it into some way that it should be, or trying to force customers to use it the way that you think it, which is not the way that the billing actually occurs in practice. And it just would have been a bad situation either way. So just another instance of that kind of like, earn the right to automate, earn the right to solve the problem. Like just do it manually until you understand what the heck you're doing.
Yeah, there's sort of an interesting. It's like I think there's a dance that happens between the entrepreneur and the customer. So you could say, well, I think that I have a hypothesis that this is a problem that needs to be solved, right? And then you might go talk to some potential customers before you build anything, or you might build something simple and then you get some feedback from them, and then you fine tune your direction, and then you get some more feedback, and it goes through a process of kind of a give and take, right? And so you can't just go off and build a ton of stuff and not get feedback from customers because you just build the wrong stuff. So even if whether it be building an initial version of your product, you say, I'm just going to work on this for years and then release it, that tends to be pretty dangerous because if you miss the mark, you could just have wasted years of time and a ton of money. And there are lots of examples of that happening at a very large scale in business, as well as innumerable smaller scale examples of that most of us never heard of. But even when you're doing a feature set, or an individual feature, it's like, oh, I mean, like we're talking about the gravity thing. Like we hear people want to do something, or people. Sandy will say, people keep asking, they want to do this thing because she'll get tons of emails from people, or even you and I will hear from them on Twitter. Whatever, people want stuff. So it's like sometimes it's stuff that we anticipated. We said, oh, I thought people might want to do that at some point. Yeah, we should do that. In some of the cases, you're like, really? Okay. And so you just have to. You can't be overly, I guess, this is arrogant about what the world it wants or cares about. You have to say, well, I think people will like this, but it's usually, but I think it works a lot better when you can have a general direction, but you let the customer lead to some degree. Where almost like there was that example, I can't remember who made this up, but it's like I read this at one time. They're talking about it's better to, if you're like laying out like a campus, like a university campus, so put the sidewalks where the paths through the grass occur. and then pave over those, because that's where people were going. Because if you put them over somewhere else, people are just going to walk through the grass anyway, right? You just wasted a bunch of money, and now you got to like what, rip up the sidewalk, or grab multiple sidewalks, kind of in close proximity, which would be kind of silly. Yeah, so all this stuff, building stuff by hand, doing stuff manually, doing tons of Zoom calls, talking to people, you're getting to know your customers' problems and needs, and you're solving their problems manually. A lot of times it's really painful, but that sort of informs you about what the shape of the problem really is, because sometimes it's more complex or nuanced than what you initially imagined. And it wasn't until you had multiple customers all asking for certain things. Because if you just like, oh, the first customer asked for it, then you build it, like that might have been sort of an odd case or a special case, and you just kind of got unlucky because you built
Yeah. Don't want to
something
overfit
for.
to n equals 1.
Yeah, but you're just like, okay, well, I've done this like 20 times. Like, I think I got it pretty good. This is the problem, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of been our approach, is just trying to try and do whatever we can to help customers, even if it means me doing stuff manually in the database, writing scripts, whatever, doing phone calls, Zoom calls, just trying to support them however I can. And then eventually going, okay, I need to build. The second phase is I might be building some administrative UI so that Sandy can just take care of it in 2 minutes, as opposed to me taking me 3 hours
Yeah.
in scripts and stuff. And
Yeah.
then after that, then you move it to like a self serve kind of sign up wizard settings or whatever that they can do. And then that's sort of the progression.
This is like the silver lining of the pain of doing this over and over again, right? It's like if you're feeling pain from manually doing something because it's tedious, because you've done it like before, it's like, well, what that pain really represents, like, I already know how to do this. It's not that hard. You just do this and this, but it's like really annoying to do. It's like, well, that's a marker of opportunity to automate. So
Well,
yeah.
here's an example just popped up yesterday. So we have this parent whose 2 kids were at one particular school that uses our system. And the parent has a supervisory account for the 2 kids. One of the kids is no longer at that school, they're at another school. But they want to sign up an account for the student who left the school to still use it. And I was like, so what's the, and Sandy's like, well, they can't sign up. I'm like, why can't sign up? Because their email is already in the system. Like, you can only have 1 email per user account, so they can't go sign up, right? So I'm thinking, okay, so how often is this gonna? I said, well, I can maybe just. I'm like thinking, okay, maybe let me just change their email to something temporary, tell them to sign up, and then I'll like flip the IDs and what I do it manually, right? Because I'm like, how often is this gonna happen? Well, first, it always starts that way. Well, how often is it going to happen, right? Well, it's like the first time it's ever happened, or maybe the second. And then it'll happen again. And the bigger you get, and then pretty soon it's a thing. And then it's like, because I said, I have too much to do, this stuff, high priority things to do. I can't build a workflow for this now. Can we just do it manually? And she's like, yeah, sure. Like we always do. But eventually, okay, what happens? Your emails, you try and sign up. Your email is already used. It detects it. That's just used as a view only supervisory account for something else. You don't have a credit card on file, but you got a credit. No, it detects that and says, okay, you want to sign up. You want to put a credit card on file. It's the whole thing. And it's not super complicated, but it could be a day or two of work to get totally right. These things are always more complicated than you think. And I mean, oh, well, like, there's some database things that happen and some payment things that have to happen, but then there's all the UI flow that sometimes you got to make it work so it doesn't confuse the person, the customers. They're like, wait, what is happening? Anyway,
Yeah.
but that's an example, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
and this kind of thing plays out like over and over in different. This was just one example of a thing that is a constant flow of these sorts of situations, right?
yeah, well, how can I do a thing? And I want to do this
Yeah,
other thing and this. It's like, oh, geez, okay, how am I going to do this? I mean, look, I'm incredibly grateful that we're in a position where we have these problems,
great
right? I
problem to
mean,
have. Yeah,
right, and we have customers. I mean, I'm every day. I'm just like, this is so great, even though it can be overwhelming at times and exhausting and frustrating when you get customer support load of and thing. It's like, oh my god. But then just like, oh, it's a good problem to have, but it's it's still like you're not out of it. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was almost like, "Oh, you're good." Like, I'm like, "Dude, like, what? You think I'm, like, retired or something just because Math Academy is profitable? Like, what do you?" I mean, we are in the middle of it.
Mhm.
I mean, I have just I have a ton of stress. I work 7 days a week, almost every week. Even on an off day when I kinda half-ass it, there might be a Sunday where I only put 3 or 4 hours in, and I'm like, "Wow, that was a complete day off," you know? But that doesn't happen very often because I couldn't live with the guilt and also there's just too much, and Sandy can never take it off. She's like, "If I take a day off, I wake up and I got 50 more support emails to deal with than I woulda had." Can never, ever, ever take a day off. People say, "Well, Jason, why don't you just hire some customer support?" Okay, well, first of all, yeah, we probably do need to hire someone to help with customer support. But the problem with customer support is you have to have deep knowledge about your customers and how the system works. People who would want to do customer, it's like the turnover rate is crazy. So you really want to hire someone who's really high caliber person. So how do you get someone who's really high caliber person who's not going to leave and because you're going to take a month to get them really be able to answer questions right and be sort of a real insider and be the kind of person that would be a net positive and then not to leave. So right now it's purely Sandy's doing all the customer support still, which is not sustainable. But that's the reality where we're at right now. And but yeah, she could never take a day off. So it's like, and my friends said that I was like, dude, what are you talking about? Like you're acting like I'm like
Yeah,
oh, you're an easy. I mean, what? This is working my ass off. Crazy about how much work this is.
it really is.
Every freaking day.
It's much preferable to the stress of uncertainty early on that kinda,
Yeah.
like, weighs on you. It's a hard day's work where you can actually, like, go to sleep being like alright, you just think of, like, a lumberjack goes out, chops wood, is tired as hell,
Yeah.
falls asleep,
Yeah.
versus the person who's figuring out just how am I going to be alive next year as a
You're like,
company.
am I going to get a job? I'm out of you. Someone, if you're big unemployed and you're trying to get a
Yeah,
job, the kind of stress that comes with that kind of situation.
that's the worst. Keeps you up at night, yeah.
You can't sleep. Oh my god. Yeah, I 100% agree. It's like I said, I feel incredibly grateful that things are going well and that we have control of our own destiny. That's just, you know,
But yeah, it's a crap ton of work.
it's a ton of
That's
work. It's like, well,
yeah,
you have to be signed up for. It's like if so, it's like someone who's maybe like a player in the NFL,
yeah.
and they'd be like, on the one hand, it's like they have to grind. They are in physical pain all the time from how hard it is on their body to train their ass off year round. They can have to eat incredibly well. They have to, it's just a ton of work. No, and it's hard, but they're incredibly grateful. I'm in the National Football League, man. Like I am getting paid to play football. I mean, this is awesome, but it's also super, super hard for them.
Yeah, one of the reactions I got from somebody when I was letting them know, like, "Hey, like, we actually we got from not having customers to having customers, being profitable. It's great." And they're like, "Wow, great. So that means you can take some rest time now, right? Kind of recuperate." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? No." Like
You're in the NFL. Oh, you got drafted
you,
and
you
you're in the
made it.
NFL now. You chill out. Like, dude, I mean, college football is nothing to the NFL. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm a
I know.
professional. Now I'm like, this is what I do all day, every day. Am I going to get cut next year? My contract going to be ended? I mean, am I going to get injured? Am I out? Like, I got to do every possible thing I can do
Yeah,
to stay on the field, keep getting
exactly.
paid. Yeah, that's kind of how it is. Exactly. So, well, it's funny. I was thinking about I was just talking to this with Sandy the other day about how, like, you know, the role you've played, how that's expanded so much from just purely quantitative and it's just gone more and more, and how you've just gone through this whole process. And I think it's really, really beneficial because you have a much deeper understanding of the entire business, so that's like,
Yeah, I feel like I've gotten reps on basically everything. Yeah, like building the quantitative infrastructure, building just general backend infrastructure, the content side of thing, tons of lessons, tons of questions, building tools for the content, doing I guess I am on X now and like helping out with
yeah, now you're
marketing
a public
things.
personality, you got to put all this kind of
Whatever.
stuff.
I don't even know what I who even am I? I don't even know. I don't even understand myself anymore. So
Yeah, it's like you get thrown in the ring. It's like the movies. You have the person just gets thrown into some crazy action
yeah,
movie and they just have to adapt.
yeah,
And
yeah.
at first they're just kind of a normal person, and then all of a sudden, after just years of the situation, they just have to grow into to survive, and that's kind of what you've been. And but the fact that you've had so much experience with so many things, it's leveled you up in so many areas so quickly, which I think, and why that's important is that you have a much more holistic understanding of everything, so that when you're building things, it's not you're just in the silo that you don't really understand what's going on.
Definitely a lot of, I can think back to times when I was just working on quant stuff that's like, well, my concerns, my how do we improve the system? How do we whatever? Like, well, it's always got this quant lens that I'm looking through, right? So it's like people see what they're familiar with, right? So it's and now it's kind of like, yeah, looking back, I can yeah, just getting the reps kind of going broad, getting skilling up and spinning up on every area definitely is I I have a much better understanding of
And then
what's
going from
really
a
going to move the
business
needle.
that had 0 customers
Yeah.
and was, I mean, it was like, how long do we work on this for? Yeah, we maybe 2 years. You worked on it 2 years. I had been working on it for many years before
Yeah.
that, but you worked on it for 2 full years before we had our first customer, right?
Yeah, yeah. I started working with you on the software side or summer of 2019.
And it was August of 2021 when we had our first customers, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And oh, I should say one thing to clarify for listener. Anyone who's wondering, like, wait, like, didn't you say earlier not to work on something for too long before? Like, well, what we were doing is we had this in-person school system, right, in the Pasadena Unified School District that we were building the software, running classes with, having students solve problems on the system. So it's like, well, they weren't our customer.
They were using it for
Yeah.
free.
But we got a lot of signal on like, okay, what are the actual real problems that need to be solved? That's really it's not so much that you can't go too long without any customer. It's like you need to get real signal on the real world, like what is it, the problems that people are experiencing and get wood on the ball moving those solutions forward.
Yeah, so I had the very initial version of the system I was using was like maybe 2016, I would say. Something like that, 2015, 2016, maybe yeah, and so that was several years of us using it. It was more of a manual system where, you know, for the first, 3 or 4 years where you would just, as an instructor, you would create an assignment, you just select a bunch of problems from different topics, and the kids would do them, and that was where we started. But then, of course, implemented all the spaced repetition and interleaving and all those kinds of things, and doing it manually, which was just sort of a very rough way to do it, but that having done that and then trying to push kids through so they could, finish calculus in middle school, and so you're really trying to optimize outcomes and efficiency. And so all those things that we learned, there was a lot of information that was gained even by the time you came on. Although you were working as a teaching a TA and
Yeah, I forgot
substitute.
to list that earlier. Yeah, in addition to the business side of like the content, software, everything, also like literally teaching classes with the software. Like I'm like working on like coding up stuff while sitting in the teacher's chair as the kids are doing their work. I'm going to like go check around on all the kids and go back to like coding. So, oh, this kid got needs some help with this thing. Like, okay, well, oh, what does that mean about this? Oh, the system should have done this, should have done that. Okay, let's fix that. It
Well, and
was
every day when you
crazy.
would come home, okay, when you would actually, so but before the pandemic, because you sheltered in place with us during the pandemic, before that, you would come to our place and work with me every day after teaching, and so then we would do a full, like kind of a breakdown of how the day went, what people
That's
are
right.
struggling with. Every day, I'd be like, "I said, let's walk through it. How'd it go? Did this? How's this kid doing? How's this kid doing? What's going on with them? What's going on with this class?" And you would go through everything. We would just, but that was really helpful for us to thinking through the strengths and weaknesses of what we're doing, what we needed to do.
Totally. And there's the when it comes down to like user personas, we didn't have to make up any user persona. Like I could name the literal kids. Like I got like 10 kids in this category. I could tell you their names, like exactly what happened, what like all the context around it. Like, Yeah,
You had
just
battle
yeah,
scars. It's not
exactly.
like you took some class and got a teaching credential. Say, well, some students this and some students like, no, I can tell you, this is what they did. This is why. This is how it works. Yeah, but even before then, like you had still like the previous year, you were like a TA and you would substitute for some of our high school classes, even middle school classes. You'd run teaching TA sessions
Yeah,
once
yeah.
or
This was
twice a
back when
week.
I was just tutoring full time, like just a freelance,
It was
tutoring. Yeah.
2018
Yeah, 2018.
or 7, and then you taught a summer course in AMC, like problem solving stuff. So you were doing
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot already. It wasn't like you just jumped and started working. You already had a lot of experience
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the
And that
TA
was
stuff.
after working as a tutor at Mathnasium for 4 years. So I have 300 kids I worked with there that
Well, and then all
I
the
know
ones
all
you
the
tutored.
categories. Yeah,
Well, then all the
exactly.
kids that you, okay, also all the kids that you tutored individually, right, for SAT and other math classes, ACT,
Yeah.
and you taught as a full-time as a physics and calculus teacher at that private school for a year.
Yep. Yeah,
So you
yeah,
had a
that's right.
ton of experience, all these different things pulling in. So yeah, I mean,
Repetition, repetition, repetition.
repetition,
Yeah.
right? Understand how it works. Yeah, I think that's the thing is I think it's harder to really develop a lot of insight in how something should work until you see all the failure modes and you experience them personally many times, and you're just like, oh, this is how this is not going to work. This is how this is going to, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, this is how this is not gonna work. That's really do that enough times, and I mean, what's remaining is the truth, right? It's what's gonna work. Like,
Here's what's going to work, right?
but the great part of
Yeah,
those, like, you don't have to depend on anyone else telling you, like, "Oh, this is how it's gonna work." You don't have to depend on trusting somebody else, like, "Oh, this person knows what they're talking about. They say this is what generally works, so I guess that's what we'll do." It's like, I can tell you, I can tell you exactly. Let me go through the derivation of this principle. Derivation by repeated attempt failure, attempt failure, attempt failure. Okay, I guess this is the only thing left that can work. Oh, great, that worked great. Well, there we go.
yeah. I mean, the only way it really helped, it was like, when you and I would talk about it and I would give you some suggestions and it would just sort of accelerate. So it's like,
Yeah,
hey, I would recommend emailing the parents early and often about, you're like, oh, that's a good idea. And I mean, it's like, it just sort
yeah,
of, it allowed you to speed run some progressions.
yeah. Exactly.
You had to
Right.
suffer some of the stuff, but then I'd say, well, you should do this if you're not doing that, or maybe consider doing that. And so you'd be like, huh, okay. But you were still suffering
Yeah,
through.
yeah. Well, I think it's also like, I mean, you can also tell it's like somebody who actually knows what they're talking about gives you advice. You don't. It's just like the life quotes thing that we talked about earlier, where it's like, well, you have some idea of what it means, not quite, but you at least have a direction, and when you start leveraging what you think that means, you see some improvement in the situation, and so you're like, yeah, there's not like you don't exactly escape all the pain and go from zero to solved exactly, but you at least you see a path, and it's like, oh hey, like I leveraged this advice to the extent that I could understand it, and it actually mitigated some bad things that could have happened. And the bad thing that did happen actually happened because, in hindsight, I didn't do this, which is probably what Jason had meant in his advice. It's like, well, you just keep leaning into it more and more. And so, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's why ideally, in life is like you need to do things yourself, but you need to have somebody who's maybe done it before who can just sort of help you recognize and sort of frame what's going on, so then you can kind of speed run the lessons you take from it. And you're like, okay, well,
exactly.
yeah,
No
that's probably
skipping,
true.
only running faster down the long path. Well, any other tech stuff that we've forgotten that you want to cover or you want to call it? Or-
There's a ton of stuff we could talk about, but I think we're good for now. I'm like, see, I'm always itching to get back coding. It's fun to talk about it and stuff, but then you're just like, the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, God, I got to get to work. I got stuff to build.
Yep.
It's like,
Yeah, same.
mm,
Yeah, just gonna get off and get back to the data analysis stuff that we're talking about last night.
yeah, yeah. All right, cool. All right, man. Well, that's a wrap. We're out.